Hello and welcome to the First Issue Club comic book podcast. We're your weekly comic book reading club, and we're covering almost exclusively first issue comics. They're the onboarding place where you jump in to new, exciting, fun stories. The Union and M.O.D.O.K are our two first issues, and oh boy, we got a doozy today.
Obviously, we're talking about King in Black, which is the
Huge
magnum
Marvel
opus
event.
to Donny Cates's through line through Marvel for the past 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, we're tying into this through
Silver Surfer Black,
Thor,
Mhm.
Venom.
Absolute Carnage,
You're right.
crossover, God Country. No, I kid. So I guess the first question we have to ask is, if you're a new comic book reader, is this the book for you?
I do think there were enough recognizable cast of characters throughout that
Yeah.
it wasn't too inaccessible, and there weren't a ton of asterisks or references to other storylines.
And it feels like a familiar story, too. Big alien dragons flying down from the sky into New York City.
It felt like an Avengers movie. So I made the mistake of reading the Marvel Tales book.
A get you up to speed sort of graphic novel for King in Black.
Yeah. And honestly, it made me really appreciate all of the work that Donny Cates has been doing for this moment.
Yeah.
And earning it. He always knew it was going to be a big event, but making it a tinier story for 2 years
Mhm.
before it turned into a cosmic event that might end the world as we know it. He's good. We compliment him a lot, but he's good at his job. And it's also cool that it's all in the world of Venom, which is a big character, but not like Captain America, Iron Man, Thor.
Yeah, the funny thing was we started this podcast the week after Venom #1 by Donny Cates came out. And we
You're right.
loved that book.
Mm-hmm.
I remember talking with everybody and saying, like, man, they treated him like somebody with a personality instead of making him just like, I'm going to chew your brains, blah. But that story really looked at like the relationship between Eddie and the symbiote. And it was kind of like a sad, bittersweet, codependent thing.
I think you guys would agree. Venom is having another kind of renaissance from when he was very popular in the 90s.
Yeah.
Like Todd McFarlane made Venom and Spider-Man blow up in the 90s. That is the only thing that kept Marvel alive, was Spider-Man sales and Venom sales and a little
Right.
bit of Wolverine.
Yeah.
And so Donny Cates has taken that kind of fandom and that kind of love for the character and has just jettisoned it into like another stratosphere.
So one conversation we haven't had yet about this book is Null comes down to Earth and says, I need Brock. And you assume he's talking about Eddie Brock. Once he gets Eddie,
Mm-hmm.
he's just like, you're not the Brock I'm looking for.
I'm looking for Brock Lesnar.
Oh, how cool would that be if they
threw Brock Lesnar
in the
this?
UFC fighted?
Dude, blow the doors off the fucking thing.
Oh my
he's
God.
looking for a real challenger. That'd be a hell of a
Bring me
crossover.
Kimbo Slice!
Gonna reanimate Kimbo Slice.
R.I.P.
R.I.P. But Dylan Brock has a similar sort of feel that Franklin Richards had for a while in the MCU, wherein there's this like kid character with the potential to do something immense with the powers that have been teased that they hold, but they don't have like clear definition yet. We don't really know what the idea is, and that unknown is very exciting.
Mhm.
The idea that Dylan Brock could like potentially replace Null and be like the god of symbiotes is very cool, and it makes my hands sweat thinking about the first appearance I have.
money.
Well, because I know that Noel like constantly calls them all like his little ones and everything, but like he does say that it's his child that is in that relationship with Dylan, so it could be like he's just the successor.
Venom is just had a real rumspringa, and now things have come to roost that daddy's home, coming to collect his child, and he's got a big decision to make.
But I think there's that
I
concept.
love that reference.
I think there's that concept of that if you break off from the pack, then you do become more dangerous because you can then present that threat to the pack of like, there's more than one way of doing these things. The relationship between you and your host can be different.
It makes me think maybe I could do something.
Yeah.
Wow, it's inspiring.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, symbiote.
Maybe even me. Maybe even Budget King could do something.
So is Null, like, does he have a connection to the symbiote? I guess my question is, if it was on like an SAT, is Robin Williams to Flubber as Null is to the symbiote? Did he like create it, or is it just like a part of him?
I think both, kind of, right?
Yeah. So I think he created it from himself, right? It's from essence of his being.
Gross.
Yes, that's true. This I don't even want to pull on that string.
Come on.
Now we're hitting our stride in conversation.
But then I think there's something about the planet that he was on also like forged to make it like a wild strain of symbiote and more powerful than he really imagined.
Mm-hmm.
And so like it also has this wild nature to it, which explains Venom.
Okay.
This conversation reminds me so much about something Caitlin pointed out about becoming a comic book fan and getting to the point where it's like eventually you just get comfortable with the idea that you're not sure when you're reading these things.
Yeah.
All belief suspended.
Yeah,
just like, sure. Uh-huh.
Right. I'm sure it makes sense.
They've done their homework, I believe.
I've read so many of the comics from Donny Cates in the buildup of this, and even I'm unclear as to some of the origins of Null. But what I do know is that he's like this primordial celestial powered god thing that was like an early creative force in the universe and created something out of that initial power that allows him to conquer and digest planets and like gain power from that.
Which is why he like had beef with the Celestials, right?
Exactly right. One of his like earliest foes.
I think the fact that Null was able to just like will Celestials, you find out that they're like essentially symbiote minions, is just like a display of his power, which that's the compliment I want to pay Donnie again here, is that basically the task was just he has to make a villain so believably bad and powerful that you care about this event. It just being one person, an Apocalypse, a Galactus, or whatever. And I think he created a new character and in 3 years made it believable that this guy's bad enough to really fuck with things.
I think even in the standalone issue of just King in Black, even though we weren't really trying to do a review of just the book, but like it's really easy to see how bad it is in just this first issue.
Yeah. The other thing that occurred to me is I was like, I think this is what DC Metal was going for, but wasn't able to accomplish.
Again, earning it.
Yeah.
Like it got wild so fast.
And like I'm really attaching myself to this. Donny Cates has a whole line of like clothing and stuff like that. And one thing that he's taking as his own that he's printing on stuff is Kids Like Chains, which is a Todd McFarlane quote.
Mm-hmm.
And the essence for me, what he's saying is like sometimes your design is just as important as your story.
Oh, for sure.
He was making Null epically black metal. I think he was trying to go for that.
I think also with that quote, Todd McFarlane is saying, hey, sometimes don't get hung up on the story or the details. Like, just draw something cool and make a fun, like, bloody story. Like, doesn't need to have a complete back history in the beginning. Just make it interesting.
It has to be fun and enjoyable.
And I think, like, the way, the way that he's made Null, even early on in Venom, but, like, with his sword, like, his pale face, like, he just, like, he looks cool. I mean, he looks like a demon I don't want to come for me.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
So there's a lot of interesting stuff here. There's a lot of tie-ins.
Yep.
Probably more so than they thought because they had to kick in some Empire tie-ins that COVID fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
Which we're gonna get into here pretty soon. But I was having event fatigue already with 2020.
Yeah.
Given that there was a brief intermission with COVID, but Empire and King and Blackers is so back to back because of that that I wasn't sure I was gonna like really enjoy this at all. And we were just off the tail of 10 of Swords.
Yeah, you're totally right. We will see.
We shall.
But first, let's get into some tie-ins by getting this podcast started, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Gonna be all Harry Potter quotes.
Ding 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 ding.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Union. Our first King in Black tie-in came out the same week as King in Black. Like we mentioned, was supposed to be an Empire tie-in event and is now a King in Black tie-in event. Could you guys tell that this was rewritten or restructured in any way?
It didn't feel like a symbiote book. I guess that's my answer, is it was skinned for whatever event they wanted to plop in there. Can I tell you guys a fact about Union Jack?
Already off the top with trivia, we don't even know who's writing or drawing this book. We know it's from Marvel Comics.
We got carried away real fast.
Did you know that the Union Jack character came before the actual Union Jack?
Flag that
Yes.
the British people wave.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that.
Now you know.
When was the Union Jack? Oh, here we go.
Bravo.
10 points for Gryffindor.
You could have just made it up. We don't know. Good job.
There's no not proving me wrong, so.
Sounds made up.
When do you think this book was written in relation to Brexit?
Oh.
Why?
There's pretty heavily handed references to the division in Britain about leaving the EU and just the turmoil inside Britain.
Oh, I didn't
at the
really catch
time.
that as a central theme.
Well, there's a little bit of a commentary at the top of like, can't we all coexist and be together? And this can be like a symbol of that. I remember when they announced this book, there was some controversy because was it the Scots were like, don't fucking put us in a Union superhero team because you don't understand the turmoil that's going on between our countries right now.
Go watch Braveheart, is what they said.
Sure, yeah, that was their battle cry.
Yeah.
Written on their signs, on their t-shirts.
Go watch Braveheart.
I didn't know that about the Scots when this came out. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah. People were really mad about it.
We aren't the only ones that have inner conflict in America.
Yeah.
I guess I just skated right past that. I mean, I when you're saying that, I'm remembering like how there's a couple of comments reference that there are a lot of folks represented in the Union, but I also thought it was weird that if they're going to do that, it's so homogenous. Like for a new team up to be like more white people, like I was like, okay.
Well, we don't know what Snakes is.
I mean,
I think Snakes is literally Snakes.
That would be fucking amazing.
I'm pretty sure he's
but
like,
does not count toward diversity and representation.
Snakes.
Greg, come here.
Okay. I'm walking across the room.
I'm bringing Greg over across the room, and we're looking really closely on Snake's hand right here. Does that look like a forked tongue to you coming off of his finger that could also be a snake?
That does look forked.
I think he's a pile of snakes.
The first snake character.
Made to be a man.
The first snake
that
character.
can speak.
Yeah.
Did he speak?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he did say something. But his
he
word
said-
bubble was like...
He said like,
Pass
you don't want to
the
go there,
soup.
bro, or something like that.
Was he
said,
speaking?
He said, pass
Say it.
the
Wait.
soup.
Was he speaking parcel tongue?
There we go.
Yeah,
15
sure,
points for
sure.
Hufflepuff.
Sure. God.
Interesting point about this book. Set in England, James Bond not in it at all.
Yeah, I was really surprised to not see Mr. Bean as well, or the Beatles.
Yes.
When I was reading this book, I had a checklist next to me of like The Who,
Right.
Right.
A Coldplay.
The Lads from Liverpool,
Austin Powers.
all my favorite
Radiohead.
bands, and then Austin Powers. we were going mostly bands.
And then a fictional
And then a
character.
fictional movie superhero.
I really like this book.
It was great.
Mainly because I love when new teams are introduced.
Yep.
And I love new characters that I don't know too much about. Because I think there are some newer characters in this book.
Okay, so let's get into the characters that were introduced. We've got Kelpie, who is Scottish. She's the one with the pink hair, and she controls water.
Yes.
She made like little spikes out of a water bottle someone splashed towards her.
I like that she can just be a puddle and just like trap people.
Elsa.
Let it go.
Is that something Elsa can do?
She's Elsa, yeah.
Well, with frozen water.
With frozen stuff.
But it also water.
Correct. Next.
It is a substance that has different states of matter.
Also,
Point to Budget
Frozone.
King.
I mean, if we're just doing that.
10 points Budget King.
Also, Moses.
Wow. Hey, one more time. We're going to be getting a lot of slow clap during this episode, I feel. All right. Choir is a character that represents Wales.
I did not
the
catch
country,
that.
not the animal.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Is that why you
Damn
were
it.
laughing?
Yes.
We're talking about the Union.
I understand now.
But it did
Oh
sound.
my
It did
God.
sound like Wales because
What do
I
you mean it
also
did
thought
sound
that.
like whales? The animal whales and the place whales.
You didn't say whales.
Whales?
Whales. Whales and whales are different, sure.
I don't think the place whales has an H.
It
It
doesn't.
doesn't.
So I said it right.
WALES.
Well, I'm learning two things.
Like Mike D wants to
Just
wail
two.
on Budget King right now.
That's also spelled differently.
Okay,
So
it's Welsh. That character is Welsh.
great.
Which means she does represent Wales.
This is the character with green hair. Wailing is also like
Mm-hmm.
yelling, being loud, and I think that's her power.
And that's kind of why I thought choir, because it's multiple voices, like just continuing on and on in someone's head.
Yes.
So maybe it's just more of a psychological noise thing.
Yeah. It's always tough with these like first issues where they introduce tons of new characters.
Is
Right.
this
Because
gonna
you really
be?
want to get your head around.
Is this gonna be the new like Age of Atlas?
This could be a introduction to a new British team
I mean,
that takes more prominence.
I mean, there's essentially 5 new characters they're introducing here. That book like blew up, and all those characters got their own book.
Well, one character may not get their own book.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, see ya.
Our star character, Britannia, had like the coolest design of all the characters.
Mhm.
They are pumping her up throughout the comic book, saying like nobody wants to talk to the other people who are on this new government funded team. And she gets gutted by the symbiote. I looked up the character on Marvel fandom just to see what their like info listed
Oh, yeah,
on
yeah.
her was,
Mhm.
like powers, stats, anything that they had beyond what this book gave us.
Well, I know she's vulnerable to getting stabbed.
We know that. But the interesting thing I
10
found on
points.
this page
There you go.
was that it was listed as her first and last appearance already.
Wow.
So in 5 years, when we have the State of the Union event for Marvel, and they bring back a mysterious character, it'll be Britannia.
It'll be Britannia resurrected.
She was in the cover for number 2, which maybe is just a way to avoid a spoiler, but
Are you guys interested in this outside of its tie-in to King in Black?
If it continues to have this creative team, sure.
I really liked it. I think it's like would be a fun book to follow, and it breaks a lot of like norms in Marvel. But it's so regionalized to being Great Britain
Mhm.
that it's a little bit like I kind of question if I care. Like, I never really got into like Canadian Justice League or whatever that was.
Yeah.
and stuff. So it's
JLA.
like,
what
yeah, or
norms do you
GLA.
see them breaking for Marvel?
oh, that it's like a new
Snake person.
a new superhero team that's actually gonna like defend the world, but isn't like, but it's still lighthearted. Like I think normally when Marvel goes heavy on like they're powerful, they keep it serious. It's rare to see them make them powerful and then also a lighthearted.
Yeah,
thing.
but Budget King, they get these Marvel books that reference New York and Midgard over Oklahoma and other kind of nuanced American things in other countries that aren't America.
oh, I'm just telling you, Budget King's predisposition. I'm not
Okay,
saying it's
America first is what Budget King is
That
saying.
every other page, I'm just like, where are the whales in the ocean? They keep referencing the whales. And I
This
can't
is
get
ridiculous.
past it.
I
I
don't-
don't understand it.
I don't know if I'm too invested, but it doesn't really have anything to do with like the fact that it is British. It's just I don't know that it does enough to distinguish itself.
I wish we would have seen more from Kelpie, Choir, and Snakes because I just don't know if I like them or not yet.
Right. I don't get a feel for the culture of the team at all.
Yeah, the character design is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And it's starting to seem like maybe the King in Black tie-in was more just to get you to buy
A book.
a book
Mm-hmm.
that is introducing something and not so much so that this was just created for
Mm-hmm.
an event.
I mean, personally, I would have rather it not let in with an event.
True. I wish it was on its own legs. It didn't need to be an Empire or a King in Black tie-in. Like, this is the Union. This is a new thing we're trying to introduce here.
I wonder if they have like analytics or anything that
They have
shows
to, yeah.
that it's easier to launch a new series with a bunch of new characters if it ties into something bigger.
This may be a bad comparison, so forgive me if it is, but it's kind of like introducing Ant-Man to the MCU and like seeing this newbie interact with all these people who are very well established does not make you dislike the newbie. If anything, it's more endearing to kind of watch them find their footing amongst other established characters. So in that way, it could do the same thing for books like this, where you're like already going to get that crossover feel and get to learn more about them in the process.
And it gives them the gravitas that some of the other heroes have.
Right.
These guys can fuck with the
Right.
other guys, you know.
Yeah.
They're on the level.
Yeah.
I'll say this. If we find out that Snakes is not made of snakes, I'm never buying this book
Yeah.
again.
I don't think there's any way that he's not.
He has to be now.
We'll see. It could be fucking Brock Lesnar underneath that goddamn thing for all we know.
It could be broccoli. Next up, we've got another Marvel first issue with M.O.D.O.K head games. The writers might sound familiar to you. You've got Patton Oswalt, star of the new M.O.D.O.K series, coming out on streaming service?
Hulu.
Hulu. Okay, great.
Just dub it. Streaming service.
And then Jordan Blum is the co-writer on it, who I believe is a producer or head writer on that show as well.
Oh, cool.
So not a coincidence that this book is coming out and that they're kind of headlining it.
Exactly right. And for me, it was really fun to get to reset what I know about AIM and M.O.D.O.K in preparation for the show. Like, I'm excited to watch it, and it's fun to contextualize the characters with how they're going to use them in the show.
Yeah.
And I don't know how closely this comic book is going to be to what they want to do with the show.
Mm-hmm.
Because the show seems to be a lot more campy.
Yeah.
And a lot more fun. And the AIM henchmen seem to be a lot more bumbling and kind of imbecilic.
That's what I was going to say, is that show seems a little bit more like way zany and kind of like Robot Chicken-esque.
Yeah, Venture Brothers, something like that.
Yeah. Whereas I think that they did a good job of being like, okay, well, let's observe the medium of the comic book and be proper to M.O.D.O.K there. But also still remain funny. I think it walked the line really well.
Well, let's not beat around the bush here. These two writers are huge comic book fans. Not only are they entangled with TV and movies and stuff, but I mean, Patton Oswalt is a bleeding heart comic book lover. He loves the medium. He's written other stories before, so just to have him in here isn't just a weird ploy for the Hulu show.
And he's a good person, big fan
of Patton Oswalt.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. In
A
general.
good person wrote this, if you were wondering.
Yeah. Oftentimes questionable people of moral character. Not this comic.
Yeah. Sometimes they get on our show when we interview them. And
They sneak on. If Patton Oswalt were to sneak on our show, I wouldn't be angry about it.
Did you guys notice something that popped out to me about this book was the AIM goons that we were mentioning?
Mhm.
First, I'll say one of the most iconic henchmen outfits in the Marvel universe. I love them so much.
Yeah.
But there were henchwomen.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, wow. It almost broke my brain. I was like, I've never seen henchwomen before.
The realization that it had been lacking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Completely.
I love when something manages to do that and not make a show of it.
Right. That's a good point.
although we don't know for certain that stormtroopers weren't women under there as well. So I'm just going to say we don't know for sure.
Well, if they were, none of them spoke.
Which is a problem.
Correct.
George.
Don't we know though?
Yeah, I feel like we
do
know
that they were all men.
Like we know.
Well, okay, so this isn't a Star Wars podcast, so we're not going to get into it.
Well, in this book, AIM is basically trying to push out M.O.D.O.K. We've gathered a board. It was very funny to see AIM work like a corporate entity. And I kind of hope, and I think that's where the show is going to go, that they've got like people they've got to report to and
all staff meetings.
Yeah, staff meetings and quota they've got to meet.
So do we always know that M.O.D.O.K. had a wife and family?
No, so he's kind of glitching is the idea that we're getting. Like if you know anything about M.O.D.O.K, he's like an artificial intelligence that was created and is thusly run by basically a computer system. And we've got the idea that someone has hacked him and implanted false memories that are leaving him distracted. Your assumption, I think, that you're supposed to take away is that someone maybe on the board at AIM has hacked M.O.D.O.K to try to like force him out.
Something has happened because
Yeah.
like they did a really interesting thing about cleaning up the different iterations of M.O.D.O.K. We see in that one scene where he's like re-downloading all of his memories and kind of cleaning up his brain hard drive. We see different snippets from different comic books, and we get 5 very distinct images of M.O.D.O.K from those very popular series of just like, oh, that explains why he's so different. He's basically resurrecting himself.
Defragmenting.
Yeah. His
defragging,
McAfee
yeah.
subscription hadn't renewed yet, so he's kind of buggy.
Well, I love the first page of the comic, which is like pink houses, like John Mellencamp sort of thing, where you're walking up to this like beautiful suburban house,
Sucking down chili dogs.
and you're sucking down chili dogs.
It was very Vision almost.
Yeah, it was.
And I was like, don't hate this.
It was eerie. He opens the door, and you can kind of tell it's his shadow. You never like see him, but there's like a family running around, and all their faces are like scrambled.
Right.
And it was just it was a weird, striking way to start the comic. And then as it starts to unfold and you realize he's got these memories of son, daughter, and wife, it's kind of creepy. While the book is silly and fun, like that aspect of it was like a little haunting and sad.
Well, okay, so that's what leads me to believe that what's happening isn't nefarious. Like, he references George, which is who he was before he was M.O.D.O.K. So it seems like someone's trying to help him remember something, not trying to, like, get him out of AIM.
That's what I wondered, if that was a red herring, if you will, because there's very clearly a character in the book on the board at AIM that wants him out and is doing everything she can to get him out.
Yeah.
But she may not be the one that's driving this. I don't think
she
so.
is. I think it's something completely different. And I think the reveal is going to be very fun.
And who he has to turn to figure it out is also a big twist that makes this all the more interesting.
Yeah. So in the beginning of the book, they're trying to rob a Stark Unlimited train to sell the hardware on the black market.
Right.
Towards the end of the book, we realize he's glitching so bad, he goes to the only person he can think of that can help him, which is Tony Stark.
Right.
Which is a fun reveal.
Will Tony take pity on M.O.D.O.K and actually try to help him?
I think so.
I think so. I don't think his ego can stand not being able to figure something out over M.O.D.O.K.
Well, and it's 2 very intellectual people trying to figure out a problem.
It was so weird seeing M.O.D.O.K be vulnerable. It's like never happened before.
Right. And it's
really like fight or flight too. Like, he's not even opening the door to seeing that as vulnerability. He's just like, brain broke, you fix.
Yeah.
I'm here now to do this. Cool.
It did a great job of showcasing the brilliance of M.O.D.O.K. Like, you can tell he's book smart, not street smart, because he always finds a way to fuck up these kind of scenarios they go out on, or these missions, but he can always recoup the money they lost by like using his intellect to manipulate banking systems or stuff like that. So it's fun to watch him be like this super intelligent person, but just a complete moron. Bazinga.
What's the acronym stand for, Greg?
Stands for Motorized Ostrich Ducks Operate Kangaroos.
Ostrich ducks.
Mechanical something designed only for killing.
Mental...
Mechanical organism. Machine organism.
I think it's mental.
Mental
organism. Do you want me to look it up?
Mental organism designed only for killing.
Okay.
I think.
All right. What, do you have a guess there, Budget King? You've been suspiciously quiet during this conversation.
Yeah. Did you not like M.O.D.O.K?
I liked it. So I don't know if you guys know about this, but sometimes
more facts. More fucking facts.
Sometimes mechanized organism. Sorry.
Mechanized organism. Right. So sometimes like a guy doesn't have to speak and reiterate what is just said for other people to understand it.
Here's the thing about podcasts. That's what they are. It's typically 3 dudes yelling at one another. We are different because we got a lady.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I love hearing you guys just wax poetic about M.O.D.O.K, and then as like Marvel heads, be looking at like a book that doesn't take itself seriously and is also honestly a book that's just promoting a television show and it's still good. That's kind of amazing.
It is.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think we get that twinge of sadness because of who Patton Oswalt is as a comedian
Sure.
and as a writer. He is definitely like a grand conductor of the melancholy. Like he just knows how to make sad look good.
Mm-hmm.
It's so strange. I mean, he's lived a very
Sad
I don't know,
life.
tragic life, but he's had some very tragic stuff happen to him, and he's just always rolled with it so well. And I'm sure therapy is a big proponent of that, but like, what a great person to kind of dive into the unhappiness of M.O.D.O.K. Who wouldn't want to be a giant head floating around?
That floating onion has layers, man.
Cut it right, making me cry.
Just like onions will do.
His
And-
daughter too, the way she was drawn,
Oh, God,
killed me.
It's so funny. He's got a typical humanoid wife and son, and then his daughter is like a floating M.O.D.O.K head.
It's like the litter of puppies rule, where you're gonna have half that look like
Right.
mom and half
Yeah.
that look like dad.
Well, and that is like those are like spitting depictions of the characters from the Hulu show.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where we get the crossover of just them getting you familiar with what the idea of the show is going to be.
Oh, do you think he's gonna end up making them or like getting trapped in the show?
I don't know.
Is it gonna be like a fourth wall breaking sort of like weird tie-in or lead into the show?
I don't.
Is this
That would
all
be
a
cool.
dream in a snow globe? And it's just like he wakes up and he realizes he has a family.
I think all.
I
it
didn't realize those characters were in
Yeah,
the
they
show.
were. I
Yeah.
think all it has to do is set up M.O.D.O.K as kind of funny and interesting. Is all they're trying to do for this show. I don't know if they're gonna go directly into it, but it did not occur to me from the. Did you watch the preview or like the little pilot thing they did?
We watched it
It was
here.
Yeah.
a while back. I
But-
can't remember the details of it.
In watching that, I was like, this is technically in the Marvel universe, but it won't do anything in the Marvel universe. It didn't occur to me until this issue where I was like, they could actually have like Iron Man and like More Than AIM
Mhm.
like enter to this television show, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. It's hilarious to me that like at its core, M.O.D.O.K is just a failing small business owner
Right.
who is just like just doing a terrible job at his
or-
job.
But
or-
should not be failing because it's literally the smartest being.
Right.
Or even failing middle management, which is funnier.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't own AIM.
Well, we've got a handful of other first issues that we saw this week and some comic book news that we normally would have hit on that I think it's going to make its way into our Patreon this week. So go over there if you want to hear some of that stuff that otherwise you would have normally got in our main feed. But otherwise, we've been First Issue Club, baby. We're recording on the fucking moon like we always do. Audio quality's great up here.
So slap that ass.
The music
And
that's
rate 5
starting to
stars.
roll in is from Primary Colors. You know it's true. Those beats are vibing. And we'll catch you next week on the flip side, baby.
Bye.